If you want to get the most out of any 3D animation software, you really ought to know Photoshop. With its ability to quickly and easily edit maps, Photoshop will go a long ways in making your 3D scenes look both more believable and more realistic. Let me show you a couple of different ways that you can use it to better your work in 3ds Max. Let's say that you've got a map that you'd like to either change the color of, or maybe lighten or darken a few particular areas on. For that, the software offers two different controls, the Dodge tool and the Burn tool. Over on the left-hand side of the interface, you'll find the toolbar. The Dodge tool can be found about halfway down. It looks like a black lollipop. You can use it to lighten up areas of your image. I'll take the chip paint in the lower left-hand corner of the picture and see if I can't lighten it up. When wanting to instead darken an area, you can use the Burn tool. You can find it by holding down on the Dodge icon. Let's take the painted area on the right-hand side of the picture and see if we can't darken that up. Painting over the same area again would increase the effect. Photoshop is also great for making quick color changes. Up at the top of the interface, I'll open up an image I have loaded named Camouflage. To make a quick color change, I'll open up the Image pull-down menu, choosing Adjustments, Color Balance. I could have also opted to use the keyboard shortcut Control-B. In the dialog, I now have a set of controls where I can adjust my colors. Grabbing the control handles in the middle of each ramp, I'll reduce my amount of cyan and add some blue. There's also a series of tone balance controls down at the bottom should those need to come into play. Maybe you've created a scene in Max where you need to blur out your background image a little, making things in the distance look farther away. For that, you can use the Blur tool. I'll use that on an image I have loaded at the top named Background. The Blur command can be found on the toolbar. Its icon looks like a raindrop. Painting my mouse over the mountains in the background will now blur them out. Again, using multiple strokes will intensify the effect. Now with all these toolbar commands, you can find their controls at the upper left-hand corner of the interface. So for an example, if I wanted to change either my brush size or the strength of my blur, I could easily do that. Photoshop is also great for being able to copy certain areas of a map to other areas. For that, I'll use the image name Doors. Activating the Clone tool on the toolbar, then holding down the Control key, I can select the area that I'd like to copy. Once on top of that area, I can left-click with my mouse. If I then let go of the Alt key and move my mouse to the position where I'd like to make my copy, I can paint over that area. Let's also see if we can't grab the lock in the middle of the door, making another one a little farther up. Again, holding down my Alt key, I'll click directly where I'd like to copy. I can then move my mouse into position and begin painting. Photoshop comes in especially handy when wanting to create more efficient bump maps. Now, we've previously talked about the fact that the best map used in Max's bump channel is one that has intense grayscale values. In other words, bright brights and dark darks. You can take pretty much any map in Photoshop and not just soak out its colors, but also maximize its grayscale intensities. I'll do that with an image I have loaded at the top named Rock Wall. The first command I'll use is found under the Image pull-down. From there, I'll choose the Adjustments menu, then Hue Saturation. Using the Saturation slider found in the middle of the dialog, I'll now desaturate the map. Once I've done that, I'll go back to the Images pull-down, this time choosing Adjustments, Brightness Contrast. To intensify the bright and dark areas of the map, I'll take my contrast to 100, and then I'll lower my brightness a tad. To see how this could be applied in 3ds Max, let's now save the file out as Rockwall Bump. We'll throw it in the Chapter 11 folder of our working files. Let's now go back into Max and we'll see what we can do. The original Rockwall map that we were altering in Photoshop has already been loaded onto the bump branch of the material that we have applied to our teapot. If we open up the bump map channel on our skin, we can view that map. Let's now render things out and we'll see how things look. Okay, let's see if we can't switch the current map out for the black and white version we just created in Photoshop. Thinking that we can create the same bumpy effect, but being able to do so not having to use quite a high of a bump amount value. The effect being that 3ds Max won't have to work quite as hard to render things out. Back on the bump branch in the material editor, down on the bitmap parameter section, we'll click on the long button that ends in the name Rock Wall. Staying in the same Chapter 11 folder in the working files, we can now choose Rock Wall Bump. Viewing it quickly will remind us of the changes that we made to the picture. Let's load that in, then change the amount of our bump value down to 60. To do that, we'll click on Go to Parent. So we, in essence, took the bump value down by 50%. Let's render the scene out and we'll see how things look. There you go, pretty much the same effect and getting there in a more efficient way. Photoshop can also be used to build your own opacity maps. Let's do this. We'll create a new file hitting Ctrl-N. For the size, we'll take the width to 1000 and the height to 750. We can leave everything else the way it is and click OK. Using the Window Selection tool, let's now select an area down to the lower half of our image. We'll now fill that area with a light gray color. Let's also add a couple dark black lines to the image. I'll make my multiple selection by holding down the Shift key. Once I've done that, I'll take my color swatch to black and use the Fill command. Okay, let's go ahead and save this out. We'll hit Ctrl-S and we'll name it Photoshop Opacity Map. We'll save it in JPEG format, placing it in the Chapter 11 folder of the working files. Once done, let's return to Max. Okay, staying on the currently selected blue material, let's load that map into Max's opacity branch. When the browser opens, you'll choose Bitmap, then navigate to the Chapter 11 folder in the working files. Once there, select Photoshop Opacity Map. Rendering the perspective view, we can now see the results. Let's also change the color of our background so we can see just how dramatic the effect is that we've created. I'll go to the Environment and Effects dialog at the top of the render window. I could also simply choose to use the shortcut, the number 8. Up in the upper left-hand corner, let's change the background color swatch to bright yellow. We can close things up, then render again. So, without a doubt, make sure to add Photoshop to your production workflow toolbox. Any professional animator would tell you that it'll come in handy almost each and every day.